as you can see, I rendered this, and it's still a little too pronounced here on the bump map. It's affecting the displacement map, so I want to take that down a little bit. Also, I wanted you to notice that this particular bumpiness on the side of the tire is because there's a noise filter within the texture map. So if you're getting something that's slick and shiny and you want something that's a little more rubbery looking, just add a little bit of noise, just a tiny bit of noise in your texture map. Additionally, you have control over, if you click on your material for your tires, you have control over eccentricity and specular roll-off, so you can continue to adjust those as well. You can break your output between your bump and your map so that you can see this a little bit better if you want to tweak on those, and then just attach your bump back on that system. Now, a word about games. For the most part, unless your cars, your vehicles are the primary focus in your scene, you're not going to be putting a number of different maps on your vehicles. So the shortcuts would be to condense as many maps as possible into one map, and then cut the mapping where possible. Because every map you put on is another render pass, and so that just adds considerably to the amount of time it takes for scenes to render while you're trying to keep your speed up within your game. So keep that in mind as you put special maps on your vehicles. However, for render purposes, if you're doing rendering, you're building models and rendering for the design industry, you can go to town with making that look as realistic as possible. There are a number of other special maps that you can employ here on your surfaces. Unfortunately, we won't be getting into all of that in this class, as it is a polygon modeling class or advanced modeling class. It's not a texturing class, but this should give you plenty to be able to apply to your models to make them look good for rendering in your portfolio. Now in this clip we're going to talk about HDRI lighting setup and rendering. So now that we have a few materials and shaders on our vehicle, we can go in here and set up an environment that these shaders, the chrome shader and the paint shader, can actually use to create a more natural looking lighting, a lit environment with the reflections and all. That's where the chrome shader gets its information, is through the lighting setup. So I'm going to show you a really quick way to do that that's effective. First thing we're going to do is, and I've already done it, so I just want you to be able to see what I've done. I have a dome. It's a simple dome here, and I've just taken a polygon sphere and cut off the bottom part of that and scaled that up nice and big so that I have plenty of room for my backdrop. In my perspective, you can see that I have splines here, and I've used very few knots in that, just enough to get a nice fluid curve in the backdrop, so there's no hard corners back there, and I've lofted that into place. Now this is off center, but you can see that I can select those two knots, making sure that they are starting in the same position on one end, have the same number of knots, just as we did with our lofted surfaces. And under surfaces, just a reminder that I used the loft, so it lofted the surface across here. And just delete that one because we already have one. And what I've been doing, since this is rotated off axis here, is just picking an angle, a camera angle that I want to render my vehicle. And then what I do is select on that backdrop and rotate it into position, whatever position I want it to be in. Because it is going to be seen, the lighting on that, so it is important that you have that in a location where it's going to be best visible. Put a texture on this. I'm going to use a simple photographer's model background, and that gives a diffuse lighting situation so that you can get some highlights, but it's broken up with a pattern, a simple pattern. And then for the dome, what I'm going to use is an HDRI texture. And the way that I set that up is to come right down here to bring up my material editor here. And the first thing I'm going to do is choose a Maya shader called, let's see, where's that surface? Okay, it's very simple. It doesn't have any, it's just flat, it doesn't have any specularity, anything like that on it. It's going to work perfectly for emitting light source. So once I have that selected, I'm going to come here to the surface shader attributes in the attribute editor, and where it says out color, I'm going to select here and apply a file. Okay, kind of messy in here, but you can see that file. Then I'm going to go get my HDRI light, or my texture, and this one, there are many resources to get these HDR textures. I found this one on Google. It was free at one of the CG artists websites. Very kind and generous folks go ahead and render those and post them for artists, so you can find any number of different textures that you can apply here. So I apply that, and in order to see, it'll come in black. In order to see that, you need to push F6 on the keyboard to bring up your hardware shading so that you can see the effects of that. Now, if I don't like what's happening here, what I can do is apply a, let's go to polygons, and I can put a cylindrical map on that. Go ahead and map it around, and you can see now that I have a lot of control over what's happening with this particular light source. So we'll go ahead and try that. It's a little repetitive, but we'll see what's happening with the vehicle on that. So now that we have that selected, let's see here. Alright, it's looking fine. And we have that mapped. Let's go ahead in here and render that and see what kind of light we're reflecting in our chrome shaders, in our paint shader. So let's render it and see what we have. We are rendering in mental ray, so you do also need to indicate that. I'm rendering it large so that you can see it in this tiny capture that I'm going to post for you, this tutorial. But it does take a little bit more time. Okay, so you can begin to see that I have some reflection going on within the chrome and the paint shader, and even these simple shaders I currently have on the glass, which will be updated. Show you where to make sure that your rendering is set up. You go to the rendering tool set, and under render, way down here at the bottom, render using mental ray. Make sure that that is checked so that you can render your shaders appropriately. And I'm going to go ahead and try that render again. Let's just get out of there for now. I'm going to see what kinds of reflections we're getting here. Okay. Alright, so here's our first pass, and it's not nearly what I anticipated it'll look like when it's finished, but it's showing the work that I've done on it so far. So I want a highly reflective surface in my paint. I'm possibly going to put in a map so that I can see sunset at the beach, perhaps, and also in the glass. Want that highly reflective, and so as a first pass, we can begin to see the effects of our HDRI. Alright, after fiddling with the settings just a little bit, I am getting more of what I was looking for now, but I can see, of course, all the flaws in the vehicle at this point, because with a highly reflective surface, you tend to see more of the body problems. The highlight and shadow lines really point out any flaws of the vehicle. Also, I've got a problem with my bump map in here. It's fighting with the displacement map. I've got a little too much specularity going on in the tire. I need to check my detail in these reflective surfaces, because I don't want them rendering like this, so I make my edges just a little bit bigger, a little bit softer, and I won't have that nasty breakup in the arc of light there along that edge. So a couple of tricks in the trade. You just want to make sure that you're not getting those problems. Of course, all of this needs to be finished and detailed out, and I see that I have a flat area right in here because the highlight shadow of the body, the shape is off just a little bit, so I'll have to check into that. I might have to rebuild that with the splines. Pushing and pulling verts at this point will only make that worse. Additionally, I've got a problem here in the lower panel because it needs to be flatter. When I check my reference, it's a flat, not a convex shape. And the pipe, of course, needs to be finished. A lot of detail that needs to be gone over and created, actually. Headlights, taillights, and mirrors, that sort of thing. So, but I am getting a better result with the rendering, and that makes me happy, so let's forge on, create some detail.